In a big, fancy house on top of a hill, there lived a rich man who everyone called the Millionaire. He wasn't just any millionaire. He was the kind of person people whispered about. Some said he had built his fortune by being ruthless in business. Others admired him for his sharp mind and ability to turn nothing into something. But no matter what people thought, one thing was certain. The millionaire was lonely. His mansion was huge, with dozens of rooms filled with expensive furniture, crystal chandeliers and paintings worth more than most people earned in their lifetimes. Yet despite all the luxury, it felt empty. There were no loud family dinners or kids running around. The only sounds you'd usually hear were the ticking of clocks and the soft echo of his footsteps as he moved through the halls. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky orange and purple, the millionaire sat alone in his study. He was going over some papers, trying to focus on work like always. But tonight something unusual caught his attention. From somewhere deep inside the house came a faint sound, a melody that seemed to float through the air like a gentle breeze. At first he thought he might be imagining things. After all, who would dare play music in his house without permission? Curious, he stood up from his desk and followed the sound. It grew louder as he walked down the long, polished corridors lined with portraits of ancestors he barely remembered. Each step brought him closer to the source of the mysterious tune. Finally, he reached the grand ballroom. Pushing open the heavy wooden doors, he froze. Inside, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight streaming through the tall windows, sat someone at the old piano. It was Emily, the maid. She worked quietly in the background, tidying up the house, making sure everything sparkled. No one paid much attention to her. She kept to herself and did her job well. But now, seeing her here, seated at the grand piano, her fingers dancing gracefully across the keys, the millionaire couldn't believe his eyes. The music she played was unlike anything he'd heard before. It wasn't flashy or showy. Instead, it carried a depth that made his chest tighten. Every note told a story, each chord brimming with emotion. Sadness, longing, hope. It was all there, woven together in a way that felt raw and honest. For a moment, he forgot where he was. All he could do was stand there transfixed, listening. Then suddenly the music stopped. Emily must have sensed someone watching her because she turned her head sharply and saw him standing in the doorway. Her face flushed red with embarrassment. "I'm sorry," she stammered quickly, standing up from the bench. "I didn't mean to disturb you. I shouldn't have." But the millionaire held up a hand, cutting her off mid-sentence. His voice was calm but curious. "Who taught you to play like that?" he asked. Emily hesitated, unsure how to respond. This was the first time the millionaire had spoken directly to her in months, maybe even years. Normally, their interactions were limited to polite nods or brief instructions. Now here he was, asking her a personal question. She swallowed nervously and answered, "My father. He was a musician." Her words hung in the air between them. The millionaire studied her face, noticing the mix of fear and pride in her expression. He wanted to ask more, to know why someone with such talent was working as a maid, but something stopped him. Instead, he simply nodded and said, "Play again tomorrow, same time." And with that, he turned and left the room, leaving Emily, stunned and confused. As he walked back to his study, his mind raced. That melody, it stirred something inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. Memories began to surface, fragments of a past he'd tried so hard to forget. Who was this girl? And why did her music feel so familiar? Little did he know, this chance encounter would change both their lives forever. The next day, the millionaire found himself distracted. His mind kept drifting back to the haunting melody he'd heard the night before, and the young woman who had played it. He couldn't shake off the feeling that there was something about her, something deeper than just her talent at the piano. It wasn't every day you stumbled upon someone with such raw emotion pouring out of their fingertips. And yet, here she was, working quietly in his house, almost invisible until now. That evening, as the clock struck 7, he made his way to the ballroom again. This time he didn't linger in the shadows or stand unnoticed in the doorway. Instead, he walked straight in, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor. Emily was already there, sitting nervously on the piano bench. When she saw him enter, her hands hovered over the keys but didn't move. She looked uncertain, like she wasn't sure if she should start playing or wait for him to say something. "You're early," he said simply, breaking the silence. I wanted to make sure everything was ready," she replied softly, glancing down at her hands. "I didn't know if you'd actually come." He raised an eyebrow at that. "Why wouldn't I?" Emily hesitated, unsure how to respond. Finally, she admitted, "Because people like you don't usually care about people like me." Her words hung in the air, simple but heavy with meaning. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the millionaire pulled out a chair nearby and sat down, crossing one leg over the other. "Tell me about yourself," he said. His tone wasn't demanding or cold. It was calm, almost curious. At first, Emily seemed startled by the request. No one had ever asked her about herself before. Not really. Most people only cared about what she could do for them: clean their homes, cook their meals, keep things running smoothly. But this man, sitting across from her, genuinely wanted to know. Slowly, she began to talk. She told him about growing up in a small town where everyone knew each other's names. Her father had been a musician, a talented one, though not particularly successful. He played in local bars and weddings, earning just enough to get by. Music was his life, and he passed that love on to her. From the time she was a little girl, he taught her how to read sheet music, how to press the keys gently so they sang instead of clanged, how to let the notes tell a story. He used to say music is the closest thing we have to magic, Emily said, smiling faintly at the memory. It can take pain and turn it into beauty. It can make you feel less alone. But life hadn't been easy for them. Her father struggled to find steady work, and bills piled up faster than he could pay them. When he fell ill, things got even harder. Emily dropped out of school to help support the family, taking whatever odd jobs she could find. Eventually, after her father passed away, she left the town altogether, hoping to start fresh somewhere new. That's how she ended up working as a maid in the millionaire's mansion. As she spoke, the millionaire listened intently. There was no judgment in his gaze, no impatience. He nodded occasionally, encouraging her to continue. By the time she finished, the room felt different, lighter somehow, as if sharing her story had lifted a weight off her shoulders. "And the piano?" he asked finally. "How did you keep practicing without one?" Emily smiled sheepishly. "I didn't. Not really. Sometimes I'd sneak into churches or community centers when no one was around. Other times I'd imagine the keys under my fingers while humming the tunes in my head. It wasn't perfect, but it kept me going." There was a pause, and then the millionaire leaned forward slightly. "You shouldn't have to sneak anymore," he said firmly. "This piano belongs to the house, which means it belongs to you too, for now at least. Use it whenever you want." Emily blinked, surprised by the offer. "Are you sure? I mean, it's such an expensive instrument." "It's just sitting there collecting dust," he interrupted. "Better it be played by someone who knows how to bring it to life." For the first time since she'd started working in the mansion, Emily felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this place, this enormous, intimidating house filled with echoes of loneliness, could become more than just a job. Maybe it could be a stepping stone towards something bigger. Over the following days, their interactions grew more frequent. Each evening, the millionaire would join her in the ballroom, listening as she played piece after piece. Classical compositions, folk songs, even melodies she made up on the spot. It didn't matter. Every note seemed to carry a piece of her soul, and he found himself captivated by it all. One night, as the final chords of a melancholic tune faded into silence, he broke the quiet. "Your father must have been proud of you." Emily looked down at her hands, which rested lightly on the keys. "I think he would have been. But sometimes, I wonder if I disappointed him. He dreamed of greatness, for both of us. And look at me now." She gestured vaguely around the room. cleaning toilets and dusting shelves. The millionaire frowned. Dreams don't disappear just because life gets hard, he said. They change shape maybe, but they're still there. You haven't given up on yours, have you? She shook her head slowly. No, not completely. But dreams cost money, and I don't have any. He studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the darkened garden below. What if someone helped you? He asked quietly. Emily stared at him, unsure if she'd heard him correctly. Helped me how? With your dream, he clarified, turning back to face her. If someone gave you the chance to pursue music properly, to study, to perform, would you take it? Her heart raced. Was he serious? Or was this some kind of test? She swallowed hard and nodded. Of course, but why would anyone do that for me? Instead of answering, the millionaire smiled faintly. Let's just say I recognize potential when I see it. And with that, he left the room, leaving Emily sitting at the piano, her mind spinning with possibilities. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to dream. Not cautiously, like before, but fully, with color and sound, and light. Little did she know those dreams were about to take her farther than she ever imagined. The next morning, the millionaire woke up with a strange sense of purpose. It wasn't something he was used to feeling, this mix of excitement and nervous energy. Normally his days were predictable, meetings, phone calls, numbers on spreadsheets. But now, there was this nagging thought in the back of his mind, tugging at him like an unfinished melody. He found himself pacing in his study, staring out the window as raindrops streaked down the glass. His thoughts kept circling back to Emily and her music. There was something about it that felt familiar, like a distant memory trying to surface. He couldn't shake the feeling that the tune she played, the one that had stopped him in his tracks, the first night wasn't just random. It meant something. But what? Finally, unable to sit still any longer, he decided to do something he hadn't done in years. Explore the attic. The mansion was filled with old belongings, things left behind by generations of his family. Most of it was forgotten junk, but maybe, just maybe, there'd be something up there that could answer the question gnawing at him. The attic was dusty and dimly lit, with narrow beams of light filtering through cracks in the roof. Boxes were stacked haphazardly, some labeled, others not. Cobwebs clung to the corners and the air smelled faintly of mildew. For a moment he hesitated, wondering if this was a waste of time. But then he spotted a leather-bound journal sticking out from under a pile of papers. Something about it caught his eye. It looked old, worn, like it had been handled often. Curious, he pulled it free and opened it carefully. Inside were pages of handwritten notes, sketches, and scraps of sheet music. At the top of one page, written in faded ink, were the words, "Lullaby for Lost Dreams." Beneath it was a melody, simple yet hauntingly beautiful. As he studied the notes, his breath caught in his throat. This was it. This was the same piece Emily had played. Suddenly, memories rushed back like a flood. He remembered sitting on the floor as a child, watching his mother play this very song on their old piano. She used to hum along softly, her fingers gliding over the keys with effortless grace. Back then, the lullaby had been a constant presence in his life, a soothing sound that filled the house when everything else felt uncertain. But after she passed away, the piano fell silent. He never touched it again, and over time, he pushed those memories deep down, burying them under layers of ambition and work. Now hearing it again after all these years stirred emotions he didn't know how to handle. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was grief, longing, regret. And yet, there was also comfort. That melody connected him to a part of himself he thought he'd lost forever. Determined to understand more, he carried the journal downstairs and placed it on his desk. Then, he went looking for Emily. He found her in the kitchen, washing dishes. When she saw him standing in the doorway, she paused, unsure why he was there. "I need to show you something," he said, holding up the journal. Emily dried her hands on a towel and followed him to the study. Once inside, he handed her the book and pointed to the sheet music. "Do you recognize this?" She took the journal and studied it carefully. Her eyes widened as realization dawned. This is the piece I played the other night." "How did you have it?" "It belonged to my mother," he explained quietly. "She wrote it. Played it all the time when I was a kid." Emily looked up at him, stunned. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't mean to—" No, he interrupted quickly. "You didn't do anything wrong. Actually," he hesitated, searching for the right words. "I think it's kind of amazing. You brought this back to life without even knowing it." They sat together for a while, talking about the song and its meaning. Emily confessed that she'd learned it from her father, who claimed it was a traditional piece passed down through generations. Clearly, somewhere along the way, the melody had found its way into their family too. It was like a thread connecting two completely different worlds. As they talked, the millionaire realized something important. Emily wasn't just a talented musician. She was carrying forward a legacy he thought was gone. Her playing reminded him of his mother's love, her patience, her kindness, all the things he'd shut out in pursuit of success. In a way, she was helping him rediscover parts of himself he'd abandoned long ago. Over the next few days, their bond grew stronger. The millionaire began inviting Emily to play more often, encouraging her to experiment with new pieces or create her own. Sometimes he'd sit and listen silently. Other times he'd ask questions about the music, genuinely interested in understanding it better. They laughed together, shared stories, and slowly broke down the walls that had once separated them. One evening, as they sat in the ballroom surrounded by the fading light of dusk, the millionaire made a decision. "Emily," he said, his voice steady but warm, "what would it take for you to pursue music full-time, to make it your career?" She blinked, caught off guard by the question. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he continued, leaning forward slightly, "if money weren't an issue, what would you want to do next?" Her face softened, and for a moment she looked younger, like the hopeful girl she must have been before life got in the way. "There's a conservatory downtown," she said slowly. "It's one of the best in the country. If I could get in, if I could afford it." "You'll get in," he said firmly. "And as for affording it," he smiled, "let's call it an investment." Emily stared at him, speechless. Was he serious? Offering to pay for her education felt like a dream too big to be real. But the look in his eyes told her he meant every word. Still, she hesitated. "I don't want charity," she said finally. "I'd rather earn it." "It's not charity," he replied. "It's gratitude, for reminding me of something I forgot. Something important." Tears welled up in her eyes and she nodded, unable to find the words to express how much his gesture meant to her. From that day on, their relationship changed. It wasn't just employer and employee anymore. It was mentor and protege, friend and confidant. Together, they embarked on a journey neither of them could have predicted, guided by the power of music and the unbreakable bond it created between them. As weeks turned into months, the bond between the millionaire and Emily grew stronger. Their shared love for music became the foundation of a friendship that neither of them had expected. For the millionaire, it was a new experience, one he hadn't realized he'd been missing. He found himself looking forward to their evenings in the ballroom, where Emily would play the piano while he listened intently. Sometimes they talked about her progress. Other times they simply sat in comfortable silence, letting the music fill the space between them. But as their connection deepened, whispers began to spread among the staff and even outside the mansion. People noticed how much time the millionaire spent with Emily. They saw the way he treated her differently, like she wasn't just another employee but someone special. Gossip traveled fast and soon rumors started swirling. Some said Emily was using her charm to manipulate him. Others speculated that the millionaire's intentions weren't entirely noble. No one could understand why a man of his status would take such an interest in a maid. The millionaire heard the murmurs, of course. At first he brushed them off, thinking they'd die down once people got used to the situation. But the more he ignored them, the louder they became. Friends and business associates pulled him aside during meetings or social events, asking pointed questions. "What's going on with you and that girl?" one of them asked bluntly over lunch one day. "You're risking your reputation, you know." His jaw tightened at the comment, but he kept his cool. "She's talented," he replied firmly, "and I'm helping her reach her potential. That's all there is to it." The skepticism in their eyes told him they didn't believe him. Still, he refused to back down. What they thought didn't matter, not when he knew the truth. Emily wasn't trying to use him, and he certainly wasn't taking advantage of her. Their relationship was based on mutual respect and admiration. Why couldn't anyone see that? Meanwhile, Emily was dealing with her own struggles. She tried to ignore the stares and whispers from the other staff members, but it wasn't easy. Every time someone muttered something under their breath or gave her a disapproving look, she felt a pang of guilt. Was she overstepping boundaries? Had she become too comfortable in a place where she didn't belong? These doubts weighed heavily on her mind, making it hard to focus on her music. One evening, after a particularly long day, she decided to confront the millionaire about it. They were in the ballroom as usual, but instead of playing, she sat quietly on the piano bench, staring at the keys. Sensing something was wrong, he walked over and sat beside her. "What's bothering you?" he asked gently. Emily hesitated, unsure how to put her feelings into words. Finally, she sighed and said, "People are talking about us. They think things that aren't true." He nodded, unsurprised. "I've heard the rumors, too." "It's not fair. To you," she continued quickly. "You've done so much for me already. I don't want to cause trouble or ruin your reputation." For a moment, he didn't respond. Instead, he leaned back and looked at her thoughtfully. Then he said, "Let me ask you something. Do you regret accepting my help?" "No," she exclaimed immediately. "Of course not. I'll always be grateful for what you've done." "Then don't let them get to you," he said firmly. "Their opinions don't define us. What matters is what we know to be true. And the truth is, you deserve this chance. You've earned it." His words brought tears to her eyes, but they also gave her strength. She realized then that she couldn't let fear or judgment stop her from pursuing her dreams. If anything, the negativity only made her more determined to prove everyone wrong. Despite their resolve, tensions continued to rise. One night, everything came to a head at a charity gala hosted by the millionaire. It was a lavish event, attended by the city's elite, all dressed in designer suits and gowns, sipping champagne and exchanging polite smiles. Emily was there too, though she stayed out of sight, helping serve drinks and hors d'oeuvres. She felt out of place among the glittering crowd, but she did her best to blend in. Things took a turn when one of the millionaire's acquaintances cornered him near the bar. Loud enough for others to hear, the man remarked, "So tell us, Charles, is it true you've taken a personal interest in that maid of yours? People are starting to talk, you know." The room fell silent, all eyes turning toward the millionaire. For a moment he stood frozen, his expression unreadable. Then without hesitation he stepped forward, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Yes, it's true," he said, his tone calm but commanding. "Emily is incredibly talented, an artist in every sense of the word. She has a gift, and I'm honored to support her journey. If any of you have a problem with that, then perhaps you don't truly understand the meaning of generosity or artistry." The room erupted into murmurs, but no one dared challenge him further. Emily, who had been watching from across the hall, felt tears streaming down her face. She had never seen anyone stand up for her like that before. In that moment, she realized just how much the millionaire believed in her, and how far he was willing to go to protect their bond. After the gala, they returned to the mansion, both exhausted but relieved. As they sat together in the quiet Ball 8 room, the millionaire broke the silence. "That should put an end to the rumors," he said, with a wry smile. Emily laughed softly, shaking her head. You didn't have to do that, not for me. Yes, I did, he replied simply, because you deserve to be treated with dignity, and because I trust you not just as a musician but as a person. From that night on, their connection grew even deeper. The gossip eventually died down, overshadowed by Emily's growing success. With the Millionaire's support, she auditioned for the conservatory and was accepted almost immediately. Her teachers were amazed by her skill and dedication, often praising her ability to convey emotion through her performances. As she prepared for her first recital, the Millionaire remained by her side, offering encouragement and advice whenever she needed it. Together, they proved that their partnership was built on something real, something stronger than rumors or misunderstandings. And though challenges still lay ahead, they faced them together, united by their shared belief in the transformative power of music. The days leading up to Emily's first recital at the conservatory were a whirlwind of excitement and nerves. For weeks, she had practiced tirelessly, pouring every ounce of her energy into perfecting each note. The Millionaire watched from the sidelines, offering quiet encouragement whenever she doubted herself. He could see the weight of expectation on her shoulders, the pressure to prove not just to others but to herself that she belonged in this world of classical music. One evening, as they sat together in the ballroom after another long day of practice, Emily confessed something that had been weighing heavily on her mind. "What if I fail?" she asked softly, her fingers tracing the edge of the piano bench. "What if all of this, all your faith in me, turns out to be for nothing?" The Millionaire leaned back in his chair, considering her words carefully before responding. "Failure isn't the end," he said finally. "It's part of the journey. You'll stumble, sure, but so does everyone who tries to do something meaningful. What matters is how you pick yourself back up." His voice was calm, steady, but there was a depth to it that made Emily feel like he wasn't just talking about her. He was speaking from experience. She knew bits and pieces of his past, how he'd clawed his way to success, overcoming obstacles most people couldn't imagine. But sitting here now, she realized she didn't fully understand the cost of that journey. The sacrifices, the loneliness, the moments when he must have wondered if it was all worth it. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked suddenly, surprising even herself with the question. "All the work, the sacrifices. Do you ever wish you'd chosen a different path?" He smiled faintly, a bittersweet expression that lingered on his face for a moment too long. "Sometimes," he admitted. "There are nights when I wonder what life might have been like if I'd slowed down, taken time to enjoy the little things instead of chasing bigger ones. But then I think about everything I've built, and the people I've met along the way." His gaze shifted to her, softening slightly. "And I realize maybe it wasn't all for nothing." Emily nodded slowly, feeling a lump rise in her throat. She wanted to say thank you, to tell him how much his support meant to her. But the words felt inadequate. Instead, she turned back to the piano and began playing softly, letting the music speak for her. It was one of her father's old tunes, simple yet filled with warmth. As the notes floated through the room, the Millionaire closed his eyes, listening intently. For a moment, it felt like the entire mansion held its breath. The night of the recital arrived faster than either of them expected. The conservatory's auditorium was packed, with rows of elegantly dressed guests chatting excitedly as they waited for the performance to begin. Emily stood backstage, clutching her sheet music tightly, her heart pounding in her chest. This was it, the moment she'd worked toward for years. And yet, despite all her preparation, fear gnawed at her. What if she froze? What if she disappointed everyone who had believed in her? From the front row, the Millionaire watched anxiously, his hands clasped together in his lap. He had seen glimpses of her rehearsals, heard fragments of the pieces she planned to play, but tonight was different. Tonight the stakes were higher, and the spotlight brighter. Still, he reminded himself of what he'd told her earlier. No matter what happened, she would get through it. She was stronger than she thought. When the lights dimmed and the audience fell silent, Emily stepped onto the stage. Her footsteps echoed softly against the polished wood floor as she approached the grand piano. Taking a deep breath, she sat down and placed her hands on the keys. For a brief second, she glanced out into the crowd and caught sight of the millionaire, who gave her an almost imperceptible nod. That small gesture steadied her nerves, grounding her in the present moment. Then, she began to play. The opening. Notes were tentative, hesitant, but within seconds she found her rhythm. The melody flowed effortlessly from her fingertips, filling the auditorium with sound. Each piece told a story, weaving together threads of joy, sorrow, hope, and longing. By the time she reached the final composition, a haunting rendition of Lullaby for Lost Dreams, the audience was completely captivated. Some wiped away tears, others sat transfixed, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the stage lights. As the last note faded into silence, there was a beat of stillness, a collective pause as if the entire room was holding its breath. Then, applause erupted, thunderous and unrelenting. Emily rose from the bench, bowing deeply as tears streamed down her cheeks. She scanned the crowd again, searching for the millionaire. When their eyes met, she saw pride shining in his gaze, along with something else: relief. After the performance, the lobby buzzed with congratulations and compliments. People lined up to shake Emily's hand, praising her talent and thanking her for such an unforgettable evening. Through it all, the millionaire stayed close, fielding questions from curious attendees who wanted to know more about their unlikely partnership. "She's extraordinary," one woman gushed, turning to him. "How did you discover her?" "I didn't discover her," he corrected gently. "She discovered herself. I'm just lucky enough to have witnessed it." Later that night, as they drove home in silence, Emily finally broke the quiet. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "For everything." He glanced at her, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "You did the hard part," he replied. "I just opened the door." In the weeks that followed, Emily's life changed dramatically. The recital earned her recognition not only at the conservatory but also beyond. Offers poured in, invitations to perform at prestigious venues, requests for interviews, even opportunities to record her own compositions. At first, the attention overwhelmed her, but the millionaire encouraged her to embrace it, reminding her that she deserved every bit of success coming her way. Yet, amidst all the excitement, cracks began to form in their relationship. With Emily, spending more time at the conservatory and preparing for performances, their daily interactions grew fewer and farther between. The millionaire tried to hide his disappointment, telling himself that this was exactly what he'd hoped for, that she was stepping into the life she was meant to lead. But late at night, sitting alone in the study or wandering through the empty halls of the mansion, he couldn't help but feel a pang of loss. One evening, as Emily packed her bag for a weekend trip to perform at a festival, she noticed the distant look in his eyes. "Are you okay?" she asked, pausing mid-task. He hesitated, unsure whether to share what he was feeling. Finally, he sighed and said, "I guess I'm just not used to sharing you with the world yet." Emily set the bag down and walked over to him, placing a hand on his arm. "You're not losing me," she said firmly. "You gave me wings, remember? Now you have to let me fly." Her words brought a mix of emotions: pride, sadness, acceptance. He nodded slowly, forcing a smile. "Just promise me one thing," he said. "When you soar, don't forget where you came from." "I won't," she promised, her voice steady. "Never." As she left for the festival, the millionaire stood at the window, watching her car disappear down the driveway. Though he missed her presence already, he couldn't deny the swell of pride in his chest. He had helped her find her place in the world, and now she was ready to shine on her own. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew they would face them, together, not as employer and employee, but as equals bound by trust, respect, and the unbreakable power of music. Months turned into years, and Emily's career soared to heights she had once only dreamed of. She became a household name in the world of classical music, known for her ability to blend technical precision with raw emotion. Her performances were sold-out events drawing crowds from all walks of life. Critics praised her as a prodigy, while fans admired her humility and authenticity. Yet despite her growing fame, Emily never forgot where she came from, or the man who had believed in her when no one else did. The millionaire watched her rise with a mix of pride and quiet satisfaction. He attended every performance he could, always sitting in the front row, clapping louder than anyone else. But behind his proud smiles was a bittersweet ache. Their lives had grown apart in ways neither of them could have predicted. Emily traveled, constantly, performing in cities around the globe, while the millionaire stayed rooted in the mansion that now felt emptier than ever. Still, their bond remained strong, even if it wasn't as visible as before. They exchanged letters and phone calls whenever schedules allowed, sharing updates about their lives. Emily often wrote about the challenges of balancing ambition with gratitude, while the millionaire shared stories of small victories, like finally organizing the cluttered attic or planting roses in the garden. These exchanges kept them connected, reminding them both of the foundation they'd built together. One day, Emily received an invitation that would bring their journey full circle Carnegie Hall. It was the pinnacle of any musician's career, a stage synonymous with excellence and legacy. When she called the millionaire to share the news, he sounded genuinely thrilled but also reflective. "This is it," he said over the phone. "Your biggest moment yet." "It feels surreal," she admitted, her voice trembling with excitement. "But I wouldn't be here without you. Will you come? Please say you'll be there." "Of course I'll be there," he replied without hesitation. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." The night of the Carnegie Hall performance arrived, and the energy in the air was electric. The iconic venue was packed, its grand interior glowing under chandeliers. Patrons dressed in their finest mingled in the lobby, discussing the evening's program with anticipation. Backstage, Emily paced nervously, adjusting her gown and rehearsing mental notes. Despite all her experience, this felt different, bigger, heavier. This wasn't just another concert, it was a culmination of everything she'd worked for as O. The lights dimmed and the audience settled into their seats. The millionaire took his place in the front row. His heart raced as he scanned the stage, waiting for her entrance. When she finally appeared, elegant and poised, a wave of emotion washed over him. She looked radiant, confident, a far cry from the shy maid who had once hesitated to play in his ballroom. Emily bowed briefly, then sat at the piano. Taking a deep breath, she began to play. The opening piece was bold and dynamic, showcasing her technical mastery. As the program progressed, each composition revealed another layer of her artistry, her joy, her struggles, her dreams. But it was the final piece that left the entire audience breathless. She played Lullaby for Lost Dreams, the melody that had started it all. Every note carried the weight of her journey, the sacrifices, the doubts, the triumphs. And woven into the music was something deeper, gratitude. For her father, whose love for music had shaped her. For herself, for finding the courage to pursue her passion. And for the millionaire, who had given her a second chance when she needed it most. When the last chord faded into silence, the auditorium erupted into applause. People stood cheering and whistling as tears streamed down Emily's face. She rose from the bench, bowing deeply, but her eyes immediately sought out the front row. There he was, standing alongside everyone else, clapping harder than anyone. Their gazes locked, and in that moment, words weren't necessary. Everything they had been through, the late-night conversations, the arguments, the laughter, the trust, it all poured between them in an unspoken exchange. After the performance, Emily hosted a small reception backstage. Surrounded by admirers and colleagues, she kept glancing toward the doorway, waiting for the millionaire to arrive. When he finally stepped inside, the room seemed to fade away. She excused herself from the group and walked over to him, pulling him into a tight embrace. "I owe you everything," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. He shook his head, smiling softly. "You owe me nothing. You earned this." They spent the rest of the evening reminiscing about their journey, laughing at old memories and marveling at how far they'd come. Emily told him about her plans for the future, recording an album, teaching young musicians, maybe even starting a foundation to help others like her. The millionaire listened intently, nodding along with each idea. "You've changed my life, you know," he said quietly at one point. "Before you, I thought success meant money and power. But you showed me what really matters: connection, purpose, leaving something behind that lasts." Emily smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. "And you taught me that dreams are worth fighting for, even when the odds feel impossible." As the night drew to a close, they stood side by side, looking out over the city skyline. The lights twinkled like stars, casting a warm glow over the bustling streets below. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. In that moment, they understood that their story wasn't just about music or ambition or generosity. It was about two people who had found each other at the right time, helping each other heal and grow in ways neither had expected. Years later, when Emily was asked in interviews about the person who had inspired her most, she always mentioned the millionaire. "He didn't just give me a piano to play," she would say. "He gave me a reason to believe in myself, and sometimes that's the greatest gift of all." Their paths continued to diverge as Emily embraced her role as a global icon and the millionaire found peace in slowing down, rediscovering parts of himself he'd long neglected. Yet their connection endured, a testament to the transformative power of kindness, trust, and the melodies that bind us together. Though they lived separate lives, they carried each other's influence forever, proving that some bonds transcend distance and time. And so the story of the millionaire and the maid became legend, not because of wealth or fame, but because it reminded everyone who heard it that sometimes the simplest moments can change everything. All it takes is a chance. Encounter, a haunting melody, and two hearts willing to listen.